All right, we are going to be going back over citation tonight with more of an emphasis on the reference list citations. So a lot of this information in here you've seen, but there is some new stuff tonight as well. So we covered source inclusion a few weeks ago, and I would encourage you, if you are still struggling with this, to make sure that you review some of the resources from, I think it was week 3. Not positive on that at the moment, but it was wherever we did this one a few weeks ago. So APA in-text citations, for the most part, people are doing pretty well with this, with a couple of exceptions of, things that I'm seeing over and over. One of the things that I'm seeing over and over is people are putting the citation, they're doing it correctly, but putting it outside of the end punctuation. So in-text citation should always go inside of the end punctuation. Keep in mind, if it's a narrative citation, you're doing something like this here, Smith et al., and then putting the year. This is that tricky rule where within one paragraph, and we'll see this on another slide, but within one paragraph, the same source narrative citation only gets the year one time. And then after that, the year is dropped in that paragraph, restarts in the next paragraph. There's not too many instances where a lot of you have the same source cited multiple times in a narrative citation. So this hasn't come up as a big issue yet, but just keeping that in mind, when you have the name, especially if it's the first time, you have to have the year. Remember, et al. Is plural. I'm seeing a lot of singular language with this instead of plural. So parenthetical citations, it's the author's last name. In this case, it's et al. Et al. Has a period here, comma, and the year. If this was Smith and Jones, so somebody who's on the call tonight, if this was Smith and Jones in a parenthetical citation, what should this say? Use 2018 is fine.
Smith, ampersand, and Jones. And then the year.
But yeah, comma, and then the year.
Yeah, comma. Does that, when it's parenthetical, does it always get the year no matter what?
Yep. Yeah,
okay, so that's one of the mistakes I made. I thought that applied to anything, whether it's narrative or parenthetical in the paragraph.
Wacky rules. I don't understand why it's
okay. No. Okay, just so I know. I didn't know before.
Yeah, so that's Smith. Smith and Jones, and Jason, correct, ampersand. So if it was in a narrative citation, somebody else tell me what that would look like. Smith and Jones, 2018.
And it would be and.
Yeah, A-N-D. So Smith, A-N-D, Jones, parentheses, 2018, close parentheses. Okay.
Okay.
So that's good there. These are direct quotes. So some of you I made the comment, you had too many direct quotes in your lit review, but too many, not too many, whatever. If you're going to have a direct quote, there are some rules. And if it's in the narrative, pretty much this is how you present it. Smith et al. Or Smith and Jones, whatever it is, 2018, noted that the earth is round. You have your quotation here, and then your page number follows that in parentheses before the end punctuation. The page number doesn't get put over here with the year. It doesn't get put with the name. It comes at the end of the site, the quotation. Now, if you could word it differently, and if you had the page number ahead, and that's not detrimental, at least if you have the components, that's helpful. So somewhere have the page number, but typically this is what it would look like. If it's parenthetical, then the whole quote is put here and closed, and then the whole citation is just listed after it. So I've given you the page numbers here for information on direct quotes. Keep in mind, if it is a quote of 40 or more words, so the cutoff is 39 words that you can have it inside your content. If it is 40 or more words, it has to move to block format. I do word counts on the quotes when I see them. I don't think anybody has hit the 40 word mark, at least in the week 3 lit review. So, and before that I wasn't counting, because if you were doing annotated bibliographies and outlines, I didn't care if they were direct copy, but in a lit review, 40 plus words has to go to block format. Okay, so these are just some of those rules. Again, Jason, here's that rule where it's just the narrative and then parenthetical, always include the year. And I know for all of you, this is information overload for something you've never had to really deal with before. I get that. Never mind all the other information coming at you that is, you know, content and everything else. But definitely use the resources, because you're going to drive yourself crazy and go in circles if, you know, you're trying to figure something out when it's right there for you. And I know it's hard to like go back and review everything. But you know, pick something every week, or, you know, two things that if this week you're checking for citation and next week you're looking at, you know, something else. But just so that you can work on that. Again, you have the next couple of years. So this is just trying to help everybody get to the next step for right now. All right, parenthetical citations that have more than one source. This did not apply to a lot of you, but if so, within the parentheses, the sources go in alphabetical order. Last time we went over this, someone asked me, so if it's Smith and Jones, do I change it to Jones and Smith? No, you always keep the authors in the order they are listed for one source, but the sources go in order. So Smith and Jones would come before Zwolensky and Barrow. All right, et al is plural, and then narrative citations use A and D, and parenthetical use ampersand.
Dr. B,
Yes, Adam.
I had a question. Could you go back to the well, now it's 2 slides back.
We'll get there. We will. Let's see.
Just so I make sure. Yeah, there. So I know you have said, and all the professors have said, stay away from a lot of direct quoting, you know, summarize and paraphrase and all that. And yes, I don't know if you remember all our papers, but yes, there was one time when I should have actually quoted it, but I missed. But going between narrative and parenthetical, is there either on your own opinion or by APA rule, like to
A preferred.
right, there should be more of one than the other? Because the parenthetical seems to me like that's like typical citing to me, in my personal writing opinion. Like that's and I a few times I'm like, oh, well, this makes much more sense to say Smith explained, blah, 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 and then I go to a narrative. But usually I kind of lean on parenthetical, but I don't know that that's necessary.
So parenthetical, I would say, is hands down more common. However, that doesn't mean anything. On the page where we'll look at connected language, it helps to use narrative citations, because you don't want to have 5 sentences all with parenthetical citations of the same source. So, you know, ABC, Smith et al., DEF, Smith et al., you know, you don't want to have that. If you have 5 sentences that are all parenthetically cited at the end with different sources, that's fine. Even that you could try to vary, but typically you don't want to just have the same source cited in the same way, sentence after sentence. So variation is good when that happens. But to your question, Adam, I don't think there's a preferred way, but parenthetical is much more common.
Okay, I just want to make sure narrative, if I start to use it more than I have, is not like the alternative or the little sister to parenthetical.
Nope, you're good. Because I saw after when you came up on my screen that your hand was up. If anybody has a question or wants to chime in, come off mute, because I can't see all your hands when they get raised, and I actually can't see all of you in the screen right now. So
okay, sorry.
Yeah, I just didn't want to think I'm ignoring you. If you have something, just please chime in so we can address it. Thank you, Adam.
Yep, you're welcome. No, thanks. That was a good explanation.
All right, so we're going to move on to 4. So secondary work citations, which this didn't apply to too many of you. There were a couple, but I wouldn't say this was like an issue. But I figured while we were reviewing citation, it was probably a good idea to just throw it in case. So in this
Yeah,
case,
I had a couple of them, because I think you mentioned last time, I didn't even know that I was supposed to do that. That if in my citation, the author was citing another work, that I had to include it. So I was trying to figure out how to work through that and do it properly.
okay, and there's different ways that you can, word it in the narrative. But typically, in an article, you are reading by Jones, 2017, 23% of dogs have brown spots, but that was cited from Smith. So your in-text citation, you'll have something like, according to Smith, 2015, 23% of dogs have spots, as cited in Jones, 2017. You can also vary that. You could say 23% of dogs have spots, and then in parentheses, Smith 2015 as cited in Jones 2017. You could say, I don't know that you want to start that one with as cited in Jones 2017, according to Smith. That kind of sounds like you're like seeing two different things there, but you don't have to word it exactly this way. But the point is, you're showing who said this, that 23% of dogs have spots, but then where did you see it? And that's always the key. Where did you find it? And we've talked about before for this course and most of your courses, although I don't want to speak for the other faculty, but in most courses, we're not going to require that you go spend the time to find to find Smith, because you don't have that kind of time. So
Dr. B, quick question. So if you have that, are you required to put that in your references, that original source, or is it just the source that you're dealing with that cited it?
Yep. So just Jones would be cited. Not
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So, I lost my train of thought. I was saying Smith and Jones.
You're saying we don't necessarily have to hunt down the secondary source.
Yes, thank you, Adam. Thank you. Right. So in your coursework, you don't necessarily have to hunt down the primary source. You don't have to find Smith. You've got Jones in front of you. You don't necessarily have to find Smith. When you move into dissertation work, you will definitely have to try to find Smith. You may not be successful, and sometimes you'll still end up having to cite it through Jones, and that's fine. But you have to, at that point, be making the effort to find Smith. And there's all kinds of reasons why you might never find Smith, and that's okay. But that should be for like one or two sources in your dissertation. Most of them you're going to be able to find and should be looking for the primaries. But again, I don't want to speak for other faculty, but in most cases in coursework, we don't require it because there's no time for that. All right, moving on. All right, these are the transitional expressions that we've talked about, where this language helps you to move from one source to another. And it's just phrasing. One of you, and I don't remember who, and I apologize, basically seemed to come back to these slides and use all this language, but did it very well. So I was happy to see that, this was working for somebody, and maybe for more of you, but I just remember one paper specifically had a lot of this language. So that was good. And again, you can come up with your own phrasing, your own language, but I know sometimes it is difficult for students to, like, how do I get to that next sentence without it just sounding like point 1 from this source, point 2 from this source, point 3 from this source. You want it to flow. There were a couple people where I noted this week, the flow was just not there. It was very point, or the writing was a little off. But if you were a person that had point, this would be a good place to come and revisit the transitional language. How do you kind of massage it together so that it doesn't sound like you're reading a list of points, but you're reading a cohesive paragraph or section? So the connective language, this is where you're trying to connect points from the same source. And Adam, this goes back to whether you are using narrative or parenthetical citations. And you can see in this whole paragraph, there's multiple points or statements made, but there's only 2 actual citations, and the first being a narrative and the last being a parenthetical. But in between, we made it clear to the reader that we're talking about the same thing. So we introduce the FRLM, the full range leadership model, although I didn't put that in parentheses FRLM here, but that's what it is. And then we say included in the model. So we're still talking about the same thing. The 4 components include, and we talk about the 4 components here, and then we say the 4 components include. So it's clear that we haven't deviated. We haven't gone to another source. We haven't switched topics. We are carrying this thought all the way through, talking about the same thing. And then the last sentence, the model suggests, and we cap it off with a parenthetical citation. So there were at least 2 instances where I made this note, and it could have been in the same paper. I don't know, it could have been to different people. Where they did use connected language and it was very good, but at some point it became a little confusing. Are you still talking about the same source or not? And a good way to kind of cap that off is to end with a parenthetical citation. Adrian, did you have something?
Yeah, I think this is where I had trouble because I assumed that just bookending it, right, having the narrative citation in the front and the parenthetical in the end kind of meant that everything in between was all referring to the same citation. So it's so in addition to that, you're looking for some text that says you're still talking about the same one throughout. So for every sentence, you kind of need to have that language.
Absolutely. Yep. And that's a great.
Okay.
One of the most uncomfortable things for students to get used to is almost every sentence is cited. And that sounds like it's overkill, but that's academic writing. And where we're not citing, we're using language to tell you, yes, it's still the same source. So Adrian, thank you for saying that, because yes, if your language wasn't clear to me and I'm going, okay, wait, did we move? Are these from the same source? So you have to have that language included in there, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, so if the language is proper, you don't have to cite every single sentence. If you're connecting an idea and you're making it clear that it's the same source, you're not required to bookend it with the citation every single sentence.
Not in every single sentence, but
Okay.
I would bookend the grouping like I did.
Yeah, no, makes sense. I just wasn't, I've been, I think, out of habit at this point, putting some type of citation at the end of every sentence or beginning with a narrative one for everything, regardless if it's connecting or not. So I don't have to do that if it's clear.
Right.
Okay.
And you brought 2 more points up to my mind. One, this doesn't come up too often for many people because a lot of times the way people, you're not dealing with a lot of articles, right? You're dealing with 6 articles. Maybe some of you have a little bit more, but there's not like a ton of points from every article in every section. So typically you have, a point from this source, a point from that source, then, something else. So, this didn't happen too often, but when it does, and you have kind of a chunk of a couple statements, yes, you can kind of go through it like this. So you're bookending and using the language to put in there. The second point that you brought to my mind is many of you use double citation in a statement. So you have Bass and Avolio's, 1994 full range leadership model, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of that sentence, there would be a parenthetical citation as well. Or you left the date off after Avolio and then put a full parenthetical citation at the end. So keep in mind, only 1 citation is necessary per statement or connected language. You never need 2 citations of the same source for 1 statement. All right, moving on here. Reference list citation. So this is where not everybody, there are some issues with the other things that we just reviewed now, but this is where there seems to be a lot of confusion. So we are going to walk through this a little bit. And the first thing we're going to do is break down a citation. And these are posts, it's going to be open for you, but they'll be posted in the Not So Micro lecture. Certainly take notes if you want to, but all of this will be available to you. So the main elements of a citation, it does not change no matter what kind, well, I probably shouldn't say that because there's probably some APA exception to this, but generally a citation includes these components. So 1 is the author, 2 is the date, 3 is the title, 4 is the source, and then often they will have this 5th component, the DOI or URL. So if you can take the anxiety out of the citation for yourself by just remembering, okay, there's 5, you can do it on one hand, 5 things that I have to make sure are in here. I don't want to say most, many of you are getting the 5 things, the 5 components into the citation. It's how you're getting them in that's off. Some of you are not getting the 5 things in the citation. Now, some of you did use dissertations, which I already noted not preferred, but once we got far into this assignment, it was like, fine, just do the dissertations for week 6, make sure that you switch to the articles. But, and by the way, I did go back in and put a note that says articles are this, does not include dissertations, etc. When I realize that something needs to be changed in a course or added, I don't do it, like I'll do it through an announcement if I think it makes sense. But if I realize it when I'm grading, I'll go and put it in the ULearn block, knowing you're not going back to that, you're moving on in weeks. But when our courses get rolled, I put it in my master's and I put it in my section so I know. So if you go back and you're like, wait, that wasn't there, that's because I added that piece. I don't just change assignments on you. I do tell you if I'm going to do that, but I don't do that. All right. So author, date, title, source, and deal.
Sorry.
Oh, who's that?
Kelly, sorry, I just wanted to chime in. So like in our other classes, our professors said like they would be like, oh, we would need articles. And they stated, maybe it was just me in my mind, but I feel like they stated that if we found dissertations, that would be better than, you know, than like an actual article. So that's why when you're like peer reviewed, I in the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, well, if I get a dissertation, then in my mind that was peer reviewed, but then you mentioned it wasn't. So I was like, oh man, I did the assignment wrong in the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's on me, but I don't know. I feel like in the beginning, in the first couple courses that we had, that's what the professors were looking for, was more dissertation work than like the peer reviewed articles.
So the focus of those 2 courses is to help you understand how to write in a doctoral program. So they're telling you, look at dissertations, because that's what those students did. When you write your literature reviews, I mean, again, if you have a dissertation or 2, fine. But typically you don't want to be citing a bunch of dissertations in your dissertation, right? You want articles. And I know we are not at dissertation phase yet, but your first 2 courses are like, hello, intro to the program. Let's get you situated. Look at what a doctoral program is. Look at how we write. Look at a dissertation. This course kind of starts you on the next phase of the program. Here's the kind of work that you're going to be doing. And unfortunately, maybe, I don't know, it's, you know, starts here in the 3rd course. Not to say the work you did in those 2 courses was easy or not relevant, but the purpose of those, I don't know everything that Dr. Campbell had you do, but I know with Dr. Hood, a lot of the purpose of that is to introduce you to, this is the type of writing that you're going to be doing. That's all. So that might be the difference there, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, so here we go. So source elements. So we just talked about elements of a citation. There's 5 of them, but source is a special little friend. And that one has some spring offs, right, of the source. So these are the source pieces. So we have author, date, title, and then we get to source, and source components are source title, which you can see is italicized, or maybe it's not so obvious, my eyes can pick it up, but volume, which is italicized. We have punctuation, so the parenthesis, we switch to not italicized, issue number, comma, page range if available, period, and then DOI or URL. We're gonna keep going through this right now. So let's keep going here. This is what a citation, a full reference citation for a journal article would look like. And this this is the example right from the APA page that I've been referring you guys to. I referred you to the one for journals, dissertations, and I think conference presentations, because somebody had that 2 weeks ago. So this is the example. So if we look at it, here's the author, although there's a bunch of them. Then the date, and you can almost like draw lines, right? Like, so there's the author names, and the author names, notice it's last name, comma, and then initials, comma, not a semicolon or just comma, moving to the next one. Do not include initials in the in-text citations. This is only for the reference citations. Kelly, give me 1 minute to move through this and I'll come back to you. So we have the date, which typically for a journal article is going to be the year, period, and for a book, it's a year. Emotions in storybooks. So this is the beginning of the title. So now we're here. APA says that titles should be in, for articles, should be in sentence case. So meaning, even though if you go look at this article, all of those words, or most of them, probably not in and of, but most of them are going to be capitalized, right? Because that's the title. But when you bring it into sentence case in a reference citation, you're changing that to sentence case. So emotions in storybooks, whenever you have punctuation, you go back to a capital and then a comparison of storybooks that represent ethnic and racial groups in the United States. Okay, so stop there because now that's the end of the title. Then you move to source, and the components of the source, we have the source title. So that's typically the name of the journal is italicized. Then the volume number is italicized and it's a comma, then the volume number. There's no space between the volume number and the parenthesis for the issue number, parenthesis, comma, the page range, period, and then the DOI. We are going to walk through an example in a minute. I'll click on this just so you can see where this goes. And it goes to this style guide, which is really helpful. And there's different kind of articles here. Keep in mind, if you are not, if it's a book, which you really aren't going to have a lot of books, honestly, that you're going to say, but you might have 1 or 2 here and there, and that's fine throughout, in your works. But don't use this kind of citation. Go look up the book citation because it's a little bit different. Same thing with conference proposals, proceedings, abstracts, whatever. There's different rules for different things. So you kind of have to know what your source is. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But this page has all the different journal article examples, and then it gives you some helpful information too. Like this one's if it has an article number, if it's missing a volume number, what do you do? Basically, you just do it without the volume number kind of thing. All right, Kelly, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought you were off mute. Okay. All right, so now.
I'm sorry, can I interject real quick? So is this exactly how it's supposed to be? There's no hanging indent here?
Oh, good question. Thank you, Adam. That is a really good question. So this is how it should be. This is how it should be. I don't know why I didn't make it to my slide that way. Thank you for pointing that out because I will fix that. I'm going to write myself a note right now to fix that. Thank you for catching that.
So yes, there should be.
It should look like this page.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good, because
Yeah.
I'm
No,
sorry,
this-
can you say that again? I think I missed the point on that.
So look at this, see how this, and it's the first line, it's like reverse to a paragraph, right? The first line is out to the margin, and then the next lines are hanging, so they're indented.
Yeah, we're just not able to see the update that you made. We can only see the current PowerPoint slide.
Oh, okay. You know what? So you got, I'm sorry, I've been clicking, you know why? Because I'm sharing my screen without sharing my, okay, hang on.
So it's supposed to be indented.
Nope, it's not
No.
supposed to. It's the opposite of indented. 1 second.
So we've
here.
been indenting the whole time. For some reason, we're told to do that.
I can't.
think.
Hey, just don't say anything else. Hang on 1 second.
Okay, okay.
My spot's moving without me, and all right, let's try this again. We're gonna share, and we're going to share everything this time, so you can see. I had moved to a website thinking you guys were with me. Sorry about that. All right, let's see.
Jason, just throw out a whole bunch of words that mean indent.
Yeah. All right, so Jason, see here on my screen, I don't have this properly.
Indent. Yeah,
Right, well,
okay.
yeah, the second lines, because the
Yeah.
first, I don't want to indent.
Oh, okay, that's how I thought it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah, this,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Adam. I'm so glad you said that. I will fix that as soon as we're done here, because it's not as easy as to just fix it right now on PowerPoint. So I'll fix this later, but yes, this should be out here. And then, and in your if you're using Word, which most of you are, you can actually go in and set this. There's tons of YouTube videos out there. You can go and check, and it will set your references to APA 7, and then it will do this format for you. So you're not trying to like enter, indent, get it all right. It'll do it all for you.
Okay.
No, yeah, I know, and if just to follow up on that, if you have them there and you have your and you have it, let's say you have it perfectly like it is on the first slide that Dr. B showed us. If you go to paragraph, the paragraph settings in Word, that's where you can find it, and there's literally a drop down that on the pop-up screen that has hanging indent as the setting. So if you get all the way done and you can't figure out why it's not indented properly, and you can't get it indented properly, and you're trying to hit enter and all these other things, go to paragraph settings in Word at the top, and then within there'll be a pop-up, and in that pop-up is a drop down, and hanging indent is one of them.
That's helpful because if anybody's tried to do it with the URL, the whole thing goes haywire. If you're trying to do the indent with the URL.
I will, do I have a Word document open? Okay, here, let me get a new Word document open here. And so if we just type, actually, you know what? Let me copy this over here and see if this will work for us tonight. Let's see, because you can also, let's see how it copies into Word. I don't always have good luck with this. Let's see what it does. Okay, so what Jason is saying is if you go under paragraph,
Oh, sorry, we're not seeing your screen again.
oh my goodness, what is going on? Okay. Screen share, thank you for letting me know. Okay, can everybody see my Word document?
Yep.
Oh, thank goodness. All right, so
Yes, right, yep.
hang on, now it's not, is it highlighted? Yes, okay, so what Adam is saying, we're gonna right click, we're gonna go to paragraph. And then where did you go, Adam?
It's an indentation right there. Hit that drop.
So this will do it for you. So that's one option.
Yeah.
And then you can also, and that gets you exactly how you need it to be. I don't know if these margins are set properly. It looks like they're at 1.5. Where's my layout? You get to learn all these little, you'll learn, no, I guess that is one all the way around, but you'll get to learn different ways for you. But you can also, if we push this back out the way it was, you can also go under references. And I don't do it this way very often, and I'm trying to see if I can remember how to do it in here. There is a way to do it in here. I just don't remember off the top of my head. Style APA. We are. I don't remember. I don't want to spend time while we're recording, but there is a way to do it in here. And that didn't really help us. That just gave us the format on the page. All right. So Adam, thank you for that. That is a quick and easy way. And if you have multiple citations, on a page, you can do it like this. Now, also, somebody tell me what's not correct. If these are 3 different citations, what's not correct about this other than the hanging indent for right now?
The URL is visible.
Okay, which is okay now with the 7th edition. But there's something else with formatting. So they're not double spaced, but one of the things I will tell you, which has really been a pain lately for academic writing, and we're seeing it in the dissertations, Word decides when it's going to add extra spacing into the double spacing. So you can see a second ago, it was set at 8, and I brought it down to 0, because when it sets it at 8, it disperses it differently when you enter, or just it goes to the next line. So sometimes it's easier just to set this all at the same. So this is what it would look like if you had the 3 citations, double spaced, hanging indent.
Okay.
All right, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. Can everybody see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Pass the slide again. All right, so we're gonna move. Oh yeah, before I move on, so HTTPS, sometimes your article, your journals will only say DOI, like that's what it starts with. So just know that all DOI links, if you will, always start with the HTTPS:// and then DOI. So if you are bringing in a DOI, you wouldn't want to just copy it and stick it in unless you write the HTTPS:// I get that there are a lot of things to be looking at and working on, which is why, to me, this is something like, write, do your work, get away from it, and then come back and kind of do, for right now, you only have 6, citations or whatever. In the next one, it's like 5 to 8 or whatever. You're going to have to do this when you have, 200 and 300 citations. For right now, if your eyes get used to kind of what you have to look for, again, when you have 12 pages of these things to look at, it's going to help you. I would love to be able to tell you, use, Zotero, use all these programs that, some that Lisa talked about, and there's tons of others out there. A lot of the journals, you can bring the citation right in, you can choose APA 7, bring it right in. Unfortunately, there's 2 issues. One, for some reason, some of them are not all formatted the way they say they should be. But secondly, they might be formatted very well, as this one was. And then when you copy and paste it into something, it changes the format. So you have to be careful of just relying on these programs. You have to get to know what it is that you're looking at and looking for. Okay, so we are going to practice a citation. So the main elements, remember, are author, date, title, source, DOI or URL, and then the source piece has these components: the title, volume, issue, page range, and DOI or URL. I'm going to ask that as we walk through this, you try to type this out. Pull up Word, pull up whatever, pull up an email. I don't care where you do it. Word would be easiest because email formatting sometimes is hard. But pull that up, and while we're walking through this, see if you can type out your citation without looking at what we just did, and see if you can get it right. So we're going to walk through the pieces. So I'm just going to show you, maybe. Here we go. All right. I'm going to assume that you can all see the web page. If you can't, let me know. Oops, that is not what we want. We are in the way of the hurricane coming at 1 a.m. This is not making this bigger. I was trying to make it bigger so you can see. But this is the article that we're using as an example. And you can see, and it's not always like this, but usually the information that you need will be somewhere together, either at the front of the article. Sometimes you might have to go to the end for some of it, but in this case, pretty much everything we need is here. So I'm going to go back to here, and we're going to walk through our components or our elements of a citation. So the very first thing we need is the author. Okay, well, these are the authors here. Again, you always want to keep them in the order they are listed. The way the author order is determined is who is first author, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever, however many there are. And that's all determined by that team of authors and how the work was prepared. So the first author typically has done the most work. Sometimes they are co-authors. Sometimes it means, by the time you get to Rayono, maybe that person did just as much work as the first two, but they write as a team and they trade off who's first, second, third, whatever. Maybe Rayono only provided methodology information for this article, whatever. So the authors decide their order, and then everybody else has to keep that order. So in this case, what I want you to type out right, now on your screen is the beginning of the citation, the author names for this article. The second item we're gonna go to is the date. The date is up here and it's 2023. We don't need anything other than 2023. We don't need a month. We don't need a day. We just need a year. Sometimes there are questions about which date. So if you look down here on this article, submitted March 2023, accepted November 2020, and published in December 2023. That doesn't make any sense, does it? If it was submitted in March of 23 and accepted in 2020, but whatever. That's not our issue right now. We want the published date typically. I did double check this yesterday in APA just to be sure, and I didn't find a definite on this. So I've also said this to you in these, discussions that we've had in class. Some things APA is so specific on, and some things they're very vague on, and other things they don't even talk about. And then you're left to kind of guess. So for this, I would say typically either use the only date you can find, or if you have multiple options, I would go with the published date typically. All right, so everybody make sure you have your date written out for your citation. And the title. I talked about the title on the last slide, so you can see here, all the important words, because it's a title, are in caps, and that makes sense. So you write the title into your citation. All right, now we are going to go to the source. Looking at this, you may not be sure what the source is, but the clue here was the word bulletin. Now, if you're not familiar with this, when you first look at this and you're like, shoot, is this a journal? What is this? What am I looking at? Go take a look. Go look it up. And again, you don't have time to do this for every single article all the time. And most of them you're going to recognize. It's going to say Journal of Organizational Leadership, whatever. Once in a while, you run into something like this, which is why this came up in a search I did yesterday as one of the top things. And I took it because I knew it was something that, a lot of people probably haven't come across or heard of. So what do? Well, all I did was click on it to go see, what is it? And as it turns out, it's a scientific journal and you can read the rest, but that's what you need to know. It's a scientific journal. Great. So that's our source title. And I don't care if you spell it correctly right now. I have to spell it correctly if you're doing this for an assignment, although not that I would necessarily know or not, but right now, as long as you can get it in there, your source title. And then next, we're going to move to the volume. So volume here is 31. If that green is covering it, sorry, but volume 31. If you're like me and the first time you looked at this, you went, oh, November 2nd, 2023. Okay. And then when you had to actually pay a little more attention, you went, oh, no more. What does that mean? If it's a language I don't know, a word I don't know, maybe I should go look it up. And when you look it up, it just means number 2. So it's the issue number 2. Page range, if the pink is hiding it, it's 173 to 191. And then the last piece you need is the DOI. And what's interesting about this DOI, if I click here, it's going to take me to the journal. But if you click on the DOI, because it is clickable in the journal, if you click on it, it actually takes you to the DOI page, right? So you're not so much about DOIs. So you want to make sure that you're formatting that properly. So you had all the components you needed to make the full citation right here in this section. I'll give you a couple seconds to finish up your citation. This is almost like those word problems when you're a kid where you're given a lot of other extra information, all that white noise, and you have to figure out what's needed. We didn't need any ISS numbers. We didn't need to know where they're faculty. We don't need the date submitted, so there's some white noise here. We have to go and look at what we need. Now, again, in most cases, there's going to be a button somewhere on the database or wherever you're pulling this from that says, copy the citation, APA 7, great, copy it. And that's the easiest thing to do. So you want to be able to, you're not going to have to write every citation from scratch, but you just want to be able to look at it and go, does that look right? So everybody take your citation and let's take a look. Let's see if you got it right. Mine's not hanging indent, so just know that for now. But do you have the components? So this is what this should look like other than the indentation. So the author's last names, first initials. If they have 2 initials, that's fine. You can use those, but in this case, we didn't. Comma, again, last names, first initials. On this one, to be honest, I wasn't sure if this was the full name, but it seemed like it was, so that's how I put it there.
I have a question, sorry. Between the Riano, there should be an ant, like an ant symbol or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good question. So this is all good. This is helpful for me to go through with you guys too, because then I can see. This is not helping. I can see, yeah. So the ampersand here. So thank you, Kelly, for that. This is good. We can all catch each other. All right. All right. So we'd have an ampersand right here. And then you have the sentence case for the title. Then you get to the source and it's italicized. Your volume number is italicized, but your issue is not. Page range, and then the HTTPS DOI. All right, so how did everybody do?
I italicized the volume and the I italicized the whole
The volume.
all the information about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Besides that, it was okay.
I forgot my and sign. When I was typing these out, I was trying to be sure, so careful to get all the components to show you. So I missed an and sign. All right.
2-point deduction.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what's interesting, Jason? There are some things that I spot check, right? So if I'm looking at this, some of the things I'm looking for right off the bat that I know I can tell is the title, is it in sentence case? Are the right things italicized? Because there should only be the name of the journal and the volume number, and the little comma and space get italicized with them as you go. Those are things I'm looking for. To be honest with you, if you didn't have the author's name spelled correctly, and again, I'm not encouraging this, but it's not something I would know because I do not have the time or ability to go to every single person's every source, right? So I have to rely on you, yes, that you had all this right. I probably wouldn't have picked up on the fact that there wasn't an and sign there because usually the authors are kind of like the gimme, right? Check, did you put some authors there? If you had authors, great. What are the things that you need to make sure are in there? Now, when we get to dissertation time, then we're going to be checking out, do you have the initials right with the periods, the commas, the and? Yes. But when I'm grading tons of these and going through and just trying to make sure every citation is right, if it's a journal article, what I'm looking for is what I just said. Sentence case, italicized, and that the information is actually there. So basically all the source information needs to be there, title and all the source and the year. And some of you have citations where you have like a year up here, then you have a year at the end. So just always know, like I said before, 1 citation per statement. Anytime you have some kind of information, you generally don't need it twice in any of this stuff. Okay, so again, these are the most common types of sources I'm seeing in your work. So I just put these APA style guides sites here again. And then this doesn't really have to do with citation, but for some of you, if you fell into the category where your literature review was more of a series of article reviews, or it just didn't flow, it wasn't cohesive, then I would suggest going back to the week 3 not so micro lecture block for an example of a literature review, and the week 4 not so micro lecture block for information on synthesizing. That was what we talked about last week. I didn't spend a ton of time there because it's not something I can teach you very quickly. It's something that you kind of have to look at, understand, and just work on. And I noted to those of you that are in this category, I don't expect you to become academic writers overnight, but I do expect that you start to learn what it is you need to do and what you need to look for. So if you're a person who's writing is not where it needs to be yet, don't be discouraged. You have a long way to get there, but we have to start telling you to note it now so that you can start working on it. Go to the writing center, that's helpful, but something else that I actually forgot to mention in my announcements yesterday, use Grammarly. I don't use it, but I know students have a lot of success. If you're not a fan of Grammarly, maybe there's something else. But Grammarly, and a lot of people will pay for while they're in this program, the Grammarly Premium. It is really helpful for people that struggle with writing, because you write your paper with Grammarly open and it will make suggestions like you can be more concise here, or this wording is off, or whatever. It's a really helpful tool. So if you're struggling, that may be a good way to go. One thing I will caution you, if you use Grammarly Premium, I don't think it happens with the free version, but if you use Premium, it tells you right on the Grammarly site that they're using AI. When your assignments are submitted to Turnitin has an AI checker. So we know how to account for that with Grammarly, but if you do run into a faculty member who's like, hey, what's going on with your AI percentage? Who wrote your paper? Make sure that you have that conversation about Grammarly and how you're using it. Right. Before I stop recording, any thoughts and questions on what we just did with citation? Jason, I can see.
No, it's helpful because those were all the details that I think trying to read through an APA journal, it's just too difficult to make sense of it. You need a lesson, I think, really, because when I started doing this, I was italicizing the titles and block lettering the journals. So I didn't know it was opposites, and I know it's opposite. Or, I was connecting all the authors with symbols, not commas. I didn't think, that was correct. Little things like that. There's no way, even trying to follow the directions wasn't coming out correctly, doing it that way.
I think it was very helpful too. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Adam, what were you going to say?
No, same thing. I was going to say that this was very helpful. Also on the smooth writing part, I think, even though a lot of us have probably written a good amount in our careers or for previous schooling, it's definitely, this is something between Dr. Hood and then yourself on the smooth writing. Dr. Hood warned at least me, I don't know about anybody else, of being careful about not to get into storytelling mode, even though that made in some ways made the writing sound smoother. So I think there's a not so much not a super fine line, but there is definitely a space in there in between where you're aiming for, between being just, like you say, fact, and actually having a smooth writing experience where someone can read it and say, okay, I understood that paragraph, and that's a good thing. So it's definitely a small mark that we're aiming for, not a tiny little mark, but a small mark we're aiming for in between those two things.
And it's hard because you're all professionals. A lot of you are, you're experts in your field, your stuff. And a lot of you are choosing topics about what you do every day. So your stuff. And it's hard to say, okay, but in a literature review, I don't know anything that you know. I want you to tell me what everybody else says. So now it's like, you can't interject your thoughts. You have to just use your words to tell me what their thoughts, what they published, while trying to make it sound good, cite properly. It's like you're juggling a lot of balls that you've never had to juggle before, because a lot of times, even though grad school has APA, most, programs, you're not going to get so, they're not gonna be marking you, you know, if you don't have the right citation format all the time. Some faculty do and some programs do, but here it's not about us saying, oh, you did that wrong. That is never the purpose. You can't publish in ProQuest if you don't have your citations correct. Like, they won't let you. So you have to be sure that everything is on track. And the last thing you want to be doing 2.5 years from now is going, oh, wait, what is this? Now, there's some things you're going to have to do that with and look it up in the APA manual. Yeah, sure. But if you can, the more of this stuff you can make habitual and just, oh, even if you don't know what the right thing is, hey, that doesn't look right. Let me go see what I need to do to fix it. That kind of stuff. I could feel the tension building among a lot of you and, you know, getting frustrated. And I'm saying this to you again, citation. You're like, I don't get it, citation. And I knew what was happening. Hopefully tonight, and for anybody who watches the video, this is a little helpful to move you forward, because again, my intent isn't, you know, you just saw I made 2 mistakes in there. My intent isn't to just point out everything. Hey, you're doing all this stuff wrong. I'm trying to help you. I know what it's going to be like for you in 2.5 years. And if I can help make any of that easier for you as we go, that's the goal of this. All right. We are quite over our time is going to be a long, not so micro lecture. Anything else before I stop recording about any of this?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Stop recording.